The phone buzzed against the nightstand like it was trying to escape. Marlon barely cracked his eyes open, one hand fumbling in the dark. He didn't check the screen. Probably another spam call or some late-night group chat his brother never shut up in. Before we go any deeper, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. What happens next will leave you breathless, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment. He answered with a sleepy grunt, "Yeah?" It was his neighbor. "Marlon. I think your grandmother's sitting outside your gate." That snapped him upright. "What? Say that again?" "She's just sitting there. Been out there 20 minutes, maybe longer. She's got 2 bags with her. Just sitting." For a second, the words didn't land. Then they crashed in like a cold wave. Marlon was out of bed before he realized he'd hung up. He tore through his closet, snatched the nearest hoodie, and bolted for the front door. His wife, Lyra, stirred under the blanket. "Where are you going?" He didn't stop moving. "My grandmother's outside. Sitting on the ground." That woke her all the way up. She was behind him in seconds. They opened the front door together. And there she was. Grandma Inez. 77 years old. Sitting in the cold pre-dawn dark like she was waiting for a ride that forgot her. The porch light flickered, casting a pale glow over her frail frame. Grandma Inez sat on the concrete in her house slippers, wrapped in a thin cardigan, her hands trembling in her lap. 2 battered suitcases sat beside her, one with a folded piece of paper shoved through the handle. She didn't look up when they stepped outside, didn't move, didn't speak. She was just still. Marlon's heart thudded against his ribs. He dropped to his knees beside her. "Grandma? What are you doing out here?" No answer. Her skin was cold when he touched her arm. Her eyes stayed fixed on the sidewalk like she was somewhere else entirely. Lyra was already turning up the heat inside, throwing open the door. "Help me get her in." Together, they lifted her gently and brought her into the house, wrapping her in blankets and placing her on the couch. Still, she said nothing. Not a single word. Marlon grabbed the folded paper from her suitcase handle. Just a single sentence stared back at him. "We figured this was best. Please understand." No signature. No explanation. No warmth. Just cold, calculated distance. Marlon stared at the words, the meaning slowly burning through him like acid. Marlon didn't speak. He couldn't. He just sat there holding that damn note like it might change if he looked long enough. But the sentence didn't shift. The paper didn't explain itself. It just sat in his hands like a slap in the face. Beside him, Inez shivered quietly, wrapped in 2 thick blankets. Her eyes didn't lift from the floor. She hadn't said a word since they brought her inside. Lyra knelt next to her, gently rubbing circles on her back. "You're safe now," she whispered. "You're home." But the word home felt bitter. Because this wasn't how anyone should come home. Marlon stood abruptly and walked to the security monitor mounted beside the door. He tapped through the footage until he found the right time, around 5 a.m. There it was. A black sedan pulling up silently to the curb. His mother in the passenger seat, his father driving. They got out, opened the back door, and helped Inez out like she was luggage. Then the bags. Then the note. No knock. No explanation. They got back in. Drove off. Marlon watched the video 3 times, jaw tight, fists clenched. His parents hadn't dropped her off. They'd abandoned her. He tried calling. First his father. Straight to voicemail. Then his mother. No answer. Again. And again. 12 calls later, he was pacing the living room like a caged animal, the phone still pressed to his ear as the dial tone mocked him. Behind him, Inez finally stirred. Her voice, when it came, was brittle, like old paper. "I'm sorry for showing up like this, Marlon. I didn't want to be a bother." He froze mid-step. "Grandma, no." He turned to face her. "You're not a bother. Don't ever say that." Lyra sat beside her again, nodding. "This is your home now. You belong here." Inez offered a faint smile, but her eyes didn't quite match it. They held that same faraway sadness, like she was still waiting to wake up from this part of the story. Marlon crouched down in front of her, lowering his voice. "Why didn't you knock? Or call us?" "I didn't want to wake anyone," she murmured. "Figured someone would come out eventually." The simplicity of it nearly broke him. "What did they say when they dropped you off?" She hesitated. "Then they said the house was getting too crowded. That I should stay with you for a while. That was it. No warning. No plan. No conversation. Just a quiet exile wrapped in politeness." Inez looked down at her hands like she was embarrassed they were still shaking. "They said it wouldn't be forever. Just until things settled down." Marlon felt something tighten in his chest, a slow, low-burning fury. Not the kind that made you shout, but the kind that settled deep, quiet and permanent. He glanced toward the kitchen, where their daughter, Sula, was still sleeping upstairs, unaware of the storm unraveling in the living room. After breakfast, if you could even call it that, Inez sat at the table with a mug between her palms like it was the only thing anchoring her to the moment. She barely drank. When Lyra returned from taking Sula to school, Marlon made a decision. "We're going over there today," he told Inez. "I want answers." She looked startled, hesitant. "I don't want a fight." "Too late for that." Lyra nodded in silent agreement. No one said it out loud, but they all knew what happened wasn't just heartless. It was wrong. They called off work, loaded Inez carefully into the car, and drove. Not away from a problem, but straight into its heart. They pulled into the old neighborhood just after 9. The moment Marlon saw the white moving truck parked out front, his stomach knotted. Nelson, his younger brother, was standing near the tailgate, laughing about something with his fiancée, Mara. Laughing. Like none of it had happened. Marlon parked a few houses down. Not because he had to, because he didn't trust himself to pull into the driveway without leaving tire marks on someone's face. They walked toward the house in silence. The tension in Marlon's shoulders climbed with every step. Nelson spotted them first. His smirk died on contact. Mara's expression faltered the second she saw Inez moving slowly between Marlon and Lyra. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. More like the unease of being caught breaking something valuable and pretending it wasn't your fault. They didn't speak. Just gave that half-nod people give strangers they're trying to avoid. Inside, Marlon's parents were sitting at the kitchen table like it was any other Tuesday morning. His mother was sipping coffee. His father was reading something on a tablet. Marlon didn't bother with a greeting. "You left her outside like she was trash." His father looked up. Calm. Blank. "She's staying with you now, isn't she? What's the problem?" Marlon's jaw clenched. He felt it pop. "The problem," he said through gritted teeth, "is that you left her outside. In the cold. At dawn. Without a word." His mother set her mug down like she was closing a chapter in a novel she didn't want to finish. "We're not going to turn this into a spectacle." Lyra stepped forward. "You dumped an elderly woman on concrete like she was a broken chair you didn't want to fix." Nelson stepped in, arms crossed. "Look, we didn't have space, okay? The baby needs quiet." Grandma was making things harder. Marlon turned to him, disbelief twisting into something sharper. You couldn't get a hotel? Rent a room? Crash with friends for a few weeks? I'm not wasting money on rent when we can stay here for free, Nelson said, shrugging. It's family. Marlon nearly laughed. Family. That's rich. Their mother leaned forward, voice quick, rehearsed. Mara just had a baby, Marlon. You know how hard those first months are. Everyone needed stability. And your grandmother, well, she forgets things. Leaves the stove on. It was becoming dangerous. You think dumping her in freezing weather was safer? Silence. His father finally spoke, low and firm. We did what we had to do. Lyra stepped in front of Marlon before his anger boiled over. No, she said sharply. You did what was convenient. You didn't care if she was safe, you just didn't want to deal with her anymore. His mother folded her arms, eyes flashing. We made a hard decision for the sake of everyone involved. Marlon's voice was steady now, too steady. You didn't even knock on the door. You just left her there like she'd figure it out. From the corner, Mara finally spoke, her voice a quiet ripple. We told them not to do it that way. I said you should be called first. They said you'd understand. Marlon turned to Nelson. And you? You just stood there and watched it happen? Nelson looked bored. Annoyed, even. She wasn't happy there, man. Always talking about how Grandpa used to do this, used to say that. Like we're supposed to live in the past. We're trying to move forward. Marlon felt like he was looking at a stranger in his brother's face. She helped raise us, he said. She gave up her own life for this family. Paid your damn college deposit when Dad said no. Behind him, Inez's hands clenched, just for a second. Still, she said nothing. She didn't have to say a word. Marlon could feel it, the weight of everything unspoken hanging in the room like dust in sunlight. Inez, the same woman who'd once stayed up with him during fevers, who'd snuck him cookies when his parents weren't looking, was now standing silent like a ghost in her own bloodline. Nelson shrugged. That doesn't mean she gets to run the house now. Mara was uncomfortable. Grandma's intense. Mara didn't argue. She didn't agree either. She just looked down at her shoes like they might offer her an escape route. Marlon stared at them both, heart pounding. She's not a burden. She's a human being. A mother. A grandmother. She deserves more than this. His father stood, slow and deliberate. Watch your tone. Lyra didn't flinch. No, you watch yours, she snapped. You dumped your own mother because your golden boy couldn't handle noise. His mother stood too, trying to regain ground. We did what was best. Marlon stepped closer. You did what was easiest. Don't confuse the two. The air turned thick. Still. Nelson crossed his arms again. You done now? We've got boxes to unpack. That was it. Something in Marlon snapped. Marlon took a step toward Nelson, not even realizing he'd moved until Lyra's hand touched his arm. You don't get to act like this is normal, he said, his voice low and sharp. You don't get to act like you're the ones who were wronged. Nelson raised an eyebrow. You're overreacting. She's with you now. It worked out. What's the big deal? Before Marlon could respond, Inez's voice cut through the tension. Quiet. Steady. Fragile. I didn't want to be a burden. Everyone turned. She was standing now, her frame still small beneath the blanket, her eyes glassy but unflinching. Marlon turned fast. You're not. Don't you ever say that. His mother sighed like she was the one who'd been wronged. We didn't want to hurt her feelings. But sometimes you just outgrow people. That line. That was the one. Lyra's face hardened. You outgrew your mother-in-law? His father snapped. Get out of my house. Now. Or I'm calling the police. Marlon laughed once, cold and loud. You gonna tell them why? That you dumped a 77-year-old woman in 38-degree weather before sunrise? His father pointed toward the door. Out. Lyra turned to Inez. Let's go. We don't belong here. Not one of them moved to stop them. Not a word. Not a hand. Not an ounce of regret. Marlon opened the door without looking back. His mother called after him, voice thick with fake concern. Don't turn this into some moral crusade. She's your responsibility now. He didn't stop walking. Gladly. The sun had fully risen, but the air still bit cold. As he helped Inez into the car, he glanced at the house he'd once called home. It didn't look like home anymore. Just a structure filled with people who'd forgotten what it meant to love someone unconditionally. Lyra buckled Inez in, gentle and quiet. Marlon stood there for a second, jaw tight, fists in his coat pockets. He wasn't sad anymore. He wasn't even mad in the loud way. He was done. They drove off. No shouting from the porch. No Nelson storming the lawn. No last-minute tears from his mother. Just silence. When they got home, Marlon parked in the driveway and didn't move for a moment. Then he turned to Lyra. I'm filing a report. Inez blinked in the back seat. You're what? What they did was illegal. She looked away. We don't need more problems. No, he said. We need justice. They made you the problem, Marlon said quietly. I'm just making sure they get the consequences. Lyra was already nodding. I'll drive. Inez exhaled, slow and heavy. It'll just make things worse. They'll say I turned you against them. Let them, Marlon replied. If they cared about family, they wouldn't have left you out in the cold. Back inside, they got Inez settled, warm food, her medication, a soft blanket draped around her shoulders. Their daughter, Sula, had just come home from school. She asked Inez questions like, did you really grow up before the internet, and what kind of cartoons did you have? Inez actually laughed. Not fake. Not forced. Just soft. Real. Before they left, Lyra sat beside her. Marlon grabbed his keys. That's when Inez spoke, so low he almost missed it. You know. I let them think I was slipping, she said. He paused. I didn't forget the stove. Not once. But pretending to forget things, it made them leave me alone. He didn't know whether to feel proud or broken. Maybe both. The drive to the precinct took 20 minutes, but it felt longer. He wasn't doing this to feel better. He was doing it because some truths don't go back in the box once they're out. The police station smelled like stale coffee and old linoleum. Marlon walked straight to the front desk. A tired-looking officer glanced up. Can I help you? I need to file a report, Marlon said clearly. Elder abandonment. That got the man's attention. He stood up straighter, grabbed a clipboard. Are you the primary caretaker? Yes. 10 minutes later, they were seated in a quiet side office. A detective entered, mid-50s, gray at the temples, eyes sharp like they'd seen too much and believed too little. His name tag read Detective Carver. He sat across from them, looked Marlon straight in the eye. Tell me everything. So he did. No dramatics. No long-winded explanations. Just the facts. The 5:30 a.m. drop-off. The video footage. The note. Her age. Her medical history. The financial support she had been giving them, $200 a month, for 3 years. He told Corvera about the unanswered calls, the silence, the confrontation. Lyra backed him up with times, quotes, context. Marlon handed over the USB with the footage. Corvera plugged it in, watched the clip in silence. Then he sat back slowly. This isn't just abandonment, he said. This looks like financial exploitation, too. Marlon felt his pulse tick up. Go on, he said. Detective Corvera leaned forward, fingers steepled beneath his chin. If she's been regularly giving them part of her fixed income, and they still threw her out, without a care plan, notice, or emergency, that's not just immoral. It's criminal. He picked up the phone and dialed. Adult Protective Services, he said simply. Now. They waited in that quiet, windowless room for 25 minutes until a woman walked in. Late 30s, sharp blazer, sharper eyes. Her badge said T-Row. She didn't waste time with small talk. After a quick review of the case, she looked up from the report. They left her in near-freezing temperatures. No medical clearance. No contact. That alone could have landed her in the hospital. Marlon nodded. They didn't even knock. Rowe glanced at Corvera. We'll need to do a wellness check at the previous residence. If the other parties refuse to cooperate, we escalate immediately. She turned back to Marlon. We'll also need her doctor's contact, any prescriptions, and a breakdown of her financials from the last year. He handed over everything. Before leaving, Corvera looked at him again. Most people don't report this. They stay quiet. You didn't. Marlon nodded once. Quiet's how they got away with it this long. Back in the car, Lyra exhaled and leaned back in her seat. You know what, she said, eyes on the dashboard. I think you actually scared him. Marlon cracked a dry smile. Good. By the time they got home, the sky had turned gold. Inez was asleep in the recliner, bundled in her blankets. Above her, Sula had taped a crayon drawing of a smiling cat to the wall. Beneath it, written in shaky kid handwriting. Roommate Kate. It was the first time Marlon had seen Inez truly relaxed. Not just resting, safe. He stood there for a moment, watching her breathe. Something in him shifted. He didn't feel like the boy who grew up in that old house anymore. He felt like the man rebuilding a better one. That night, Marlon blocked his parents' numbers. Not out of spite, but clarity. They didn't get to barge back in when guilt kicked in. This wasn't a timeout. It was a lockout. The next morning, his phone rang, restricted number. He ignored it. It rang again, 5 seconds later. Then came the text, from an unknown number. You're seriously taking this to court? You're tearing this family apart. Marlon stared at it. Then he took a screenshot and added it to the case file. 5 minutes later, another message popped up. This one colder. We didn't even do anything wrong. You'll regret this. Marlon didn't hesitate. He typed back. You'll regret underestimating me. Then he blocked the number. And just like that, the anger began to dissolve, not into forgiveness, but into focus. Let them fume in the dark. Let them spiral in their self-made narratives. He had bigger things to build. The week passed fast. Inez settled in like she'd always lived there. Sula started calling her roommate Kate full-time, which made her laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks. Lyra bought her a heated blanket. Marlon ordered one of those massage recliners online, not to spoil her, but to give her the bare minimum she should have always had. Midweek, APS agent Rowe visited the house. She inspected every room, asked Inez gentle, clear questions, and checked for signs of neglect. When she left, her expression had softened. "I've seen too many of these cases end badly," she said. "It's good to see one go right." That Friday, the email came. Preliminary hearing scheduled. Charges: elder abandonment, financial misconduct. Location: County Courthouse. Tuesday, 9 a.m. Marlon didn't flinch. He'd been ready since the moment they left her on the sidewalk. Tuesday morning came gray and heavy. Marlon walked into the courthouse like he belonged there, not angry, not afraid. Just certain. Lyra was beside him, steady as always. And Inez held onto his arm, not because she needed help, but because she wanted him close. Across the courtroom, his parents sat in a stiff row like they were posing for a family photo no one wanted to be in. His mother looked pale, sleep-deprived. His father's jaw was tight. Nelson looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Judge Halston entered, older, steel gray hair, expression carved in granite. No preamble. No warm-ups. "Mr. Marlon Rhodes," he said, scanning over his glasses. "You're the complainant. Please state your case." Marlon stood. Calm. Clear. "My grandmother was left at my front gate before sunrise. 2 bags, no call, no knock. They drove away. Security footage confirms it." He handed the clerk a printed photo of the note and the USB drive. "She sat outside for 45 minutes in 38-degree weather." He paused. "Not for effect, just to breathe. I called both parents over 20 times. No answer. For the last 3 years, she gave over $1,200 a month to help with their bills. Voluntarily, until she didn't." The judge's eyes narrowed. "And did they have power of attorney?" Marlon: "No, sir." Judge Halston nodded slowly, tapping his pen once on the bench. "Were any formal notices given before she was removed from the home?" Marlon shook his head. "None. Just the note. No legal documentation. No medical consultation. Nothing." He sat. Across the aisle, his mother stood like she was about to perform in a high school play. She clutched a tissue, eyes already moist. "We just wanted what was best," she said, voice cracking right on cue. Inez was becoming difficult. She'd argue over small things. The volume of the TV, what time we ate dinner. She forgot things. "And with the baby?" Judge Halston cut her off with a raised hand. "I didn't ask about your daughter-in-law's comfort. I asked if you followed any legal process for removing a senior citizen from your residence." Her face froze, like the script had fallen apart. His father stood next, tone clipped. "With all due respect, we weren't evicting her. We were relocating her to a more appropriate household." Marlon leaned toward Lyra and muttered under his breath, "Did he just compare Grandma to a malfunctioning appliance?" The judge caught it. Cracked a faint smirk. Then turned to his father, voice cold. "You dumped a 77-year-old woman on a sidewalk. That's not relocation. That's abandonment." That shut them up. Even Nelson, who had been slouched in his chair like a bored teenager, straightened slightly. "Still," he said nothing. "Probably for the best." The last time he opened his mouth, things caught fire. Then came the part no one expected. The financial audit. APS had completed a full investigation. Agent Rowe had tracked months of bank records. The transfers from Inez's account were consistent, same day, every month. Labeled vaguely, bill help, family, sometimes just Nelson. No invoices. No receipts. No repayment. Just a steady siphoning. Judge Halston read from the report, each word like a nail. You've been withdrawing funds from this woman's account for over 30 months. Her entire fixed income drained. He looked up, expression disgusted. And when she stopped giving, you threw her away. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Elder abandonment. Financial exploitation. Neglect. He folded his hands. The court finds the defendants, Mark Rhodes and Elaine Rhodes, guilty on all counts. There was no gasp. No drama. Just the sound of two people shrinking inside themselves. Sentence: $3,000 fine, 12 months probation, mandatory financial ethics course. Travel restricted. Contact with Inez revoked until further review. Nelson remained untouched legally. But Marlon could already see it. Karma wasn't skipping him. That's when his father finally cracked. He stood too fast, face flushed. "You're not my mother," he snapped at Inez. No real mother would let her son be dragged into court. The judge banged the gavel once. "Sit down." But Inez didn't flinch. She stood, slow but sure, blanket over her shoulders like a crown. Her voice didn't rise. "I raised a man who's standing beside me," she said, eyes locked on her son. "You raised yourself into a corner." Even the judge nodded, like that was the real verdict. Court adjourned. They walked out as a unit, Marlon, Lyra, and Inez, shoulder to shoulder. Nelson kept his eyes down. His mother dabbed dry eyes with a Kleenex. His father stood frozen, as if shocked that his throne didn't follow him out the door. Back at home, no one talked for a while. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had already been said. That night, Inez called them into the living room. She handed Marlon an envelope. "I wanted to see how I'd be treated," she said softly, "when I had nothing." Inside, property deeds, investment records, and asset summaries. Inez Rhodes was worth over $50 million. And now? She was finally choosing who deserved it.